and last but not least, the people aspect when it comes to AI implementations. Right. So when it, when we are talking about AI, so think around 75 to maybe 80%, 85% of the, I would say maybe somewhere around 75 to 90% of the AI pilot projects actually fail. So the main reason for this is actually not having the right AI strategy and the governance aspect. So according to few, I mean, MIT has done a study and they say that 90% of AI pilots fail, and there are other different studies saying that only 26% of these pilots actually go to production. So I would say something around 75 to 90% of these AI pilot projects actually fail. So there are a few reasons for that. The first one is people are not identifying the right use cases for AI pilot projects or AI implementations. So we just see a tool which is out there, or maybe something that our competitors are doing, or maybe your senior managers actually attend a workshop or a conference or something, and they pick few ideas and they come back and they want to implement AI. And most of the leaders in companies actually they want to do some. I mean, they want to do something with AI. I mean, they don't think about the right use cases, ROI, etc., but they want to do something with AI. So that's the wrong approach. So not identifying the right use cases that would actually bring some benefits or profits or ROI to the company. And it's very difficult to identify these things. There are multiple methodologies that you need to follow, but not identify the use cases. One of the main reasons. And second thing is that you don't have the right data. So let's say even if you identify the use cases, so sometimes you may have to develop a solution on your own, or maybe you will have to buy a third-party solution. So whatever the approach is, if you don't have the right data, then it's difficult for us to, train the models or maybe fine tune the models. So I can't exactly remember whether I refreshed your memory on this on this Jataka story about two parrots. I mean, you might remember that one parrot fell into a thieves, then other parrot fell into a monastery, and one parrot started talking filthy language when it grew up. Another parrot started talking nice language, pleasant language when it grew up, because they got exposed to different environments, different data, different information, and they learned based on that. Right. So in the same way, if we don't have the right data in our environment, if we don't feed the right data to AI systems, we will not get the right output. So garbage in, garbage out. So second most critical reason is not having the right data. Then another reason is that you don't have the right skills. I mean, you need to have a lot of capabilities when it comes to AI implementations. If you don't have these skills in-house, then it will be difficult for you to do a proper implementation. I mean, you don't have to have all the technical skills in-house, but you need to have a lot of skills related to governance, policy, and strategy in-house. Maybe certain technology aspects you can outsource, but people who are using these AI tools, they need to be fully geared up. And if you don't do that, then a lot of pilots projects fail. So not identifying the right use cases, not having proper data, not having right skills, and also one of the other reasons is that not calculating the ROI. I mean, like if you don't actually calculate and anticipated ROI even. So you think that there will be ROI, but you miss out a lot of cost aspects and cost elements. And end of the day, when you calculate the actual costs and benefits, the ROI is lost. So these are some of the most common reasons that we see when it comes to AI failures. Right. So when it comes to AI strategy, there are seven very critical pillars. And if you don't have an AI strategy aligned to these pillars, I mean, there could be maybe one or two additions, or maybe slight deviations from this, because there's no hard and fast rule when it comes to an AI strategy. So this is something that I built after doing some research and after going through various methodologies, approaches, etc. But more or less, you need to have a strategy similar to this. The first area is vision and objectives. So, we all know what a vision is. I mean, vision is like a dream, and an end objective or a goal that we need to achieve. It's a very high level one, and it's like I mean. Uh, so it's a future state that we want to be in, right? I mean, like, in very simple words, what our success would look like. So if I say that I need to be the president of Sri Lanka by 2030, it's a dream. I mean, like, my success would look like, I mean, like, I'm defining my success and a future state. So we need to have a proper vision. What we are going to do? I mean, we want to be the leaders of customer service in ABC Bank by, let's say, 2030, and reduce our risk and enhance our compliance criteria by using AI. It's a very high level vision, but it exactly describes the future situation that we like to be in by using AI, right? Then what are the other things? Then use case prioritization. So what are the use cases that we should adapt first to maximize our impact, right? There could be use cases which might take a lot of time, but you need to identify the use cases that would give you the maximum return. So how we are going to prioritize. Then the operating model. So what's the governance structure that we are going to have? What's the execution structure? What are the internal team structures? Whether we have a center of excellence? What are the technical team structures? And what are the incident response mechanisms that we are going to have? The data strategy. So all these things should be properly defined. Then data and technology. What are the platforms that we are going to use? And do we have the right data? Whether we have data warehouses, data lakes, how we are going to make use of data, and this technical architecture. What are the data flows? How does the data come in? How does the data go out? So this technical architecture and technologies, applications, all these things should be properly defined. Then governance and risk aspects. What are the responsible AI frameworks? We'll discuss about those things in future. Whether we are aligned with the GDPR, whether we are aligned with the Personal Data Protection Act of Sri Lanka. If you are in Sri Lanka, so I'm sure that UAE is also having their own data protection act, or maybe some AI frameworks. So I think Istiak sent me a few documents that maybe a few weeks back regarding some of the regulations which have been implemented by various regulatory bodies in UAE. So you need to be properly aligned with that. And the organizations have different risk assessment methodologies, and the same way you need to do thorough and proper risk assessments for AI as well. How would AI impact your businesses and your other processes, etc. So governance as risk is one of the main important things. Then talent and partnerships. Are you going to use your in-house people? Are you going to outsource? Then what are the outsourced functions? What are the partnerships that we are going to create? The vendor ecosystems, different relationships with other stakeholders like government bodies or maybe academia. So all these things should be properly defined. Then last but not least, monitoring, KPIs, feedback, and controlling mechanisms. If you are implementing an AI system, how we are going to monitor the effects? How are you going to monitor the risks? Do we have the right matrices? Do we have the right dashboards or key performance indicators? And if something happens, how are we going to get feedback and maybe revise our strategy and approaches? So KPIs, most companies don't adopt KPIs. They just implement AI solutions, and they can measure the outcomes and outputs, and they don't know whether actually these things are successful. So KPIs, matrices, all these things should be properly defined. So you need to have a good understanding about at least these 7 areas when it comes to AI strategy. If you don't have a proper strategy like that within your organization, so before using any tool, even let's say ChatGPT or Claude or Copilot or whatever, you need to define what you want to do. So even if you are, most of the people buy Copilot subscriptions and licenses, but they don't even know the ROIs or benefits that these things would bring in. And these are not cheap tools as well. They are very expensive. And so if you don't have a proper strategy, where you are going to start and where you want to end up with, it will be very difficult and would be a waste of money. Right. So, okay. Now, this is a very simple example of a draft AI vision statement. So, I mean, as I explained before, you should define a success criteria for an organization. So, in the left-hand side, you see that you see a good example to responsibly leverage AI to enhance customer experience, strengthen risk management, and drive growth while maintaining transparency and regulatory compliance. So, it gives a good understanding about good understanding how the company, I'm like what the company is planning to do. Right? But on the right hand side, you see a very bad vision statement. We will use AI to transform our business, but it doesn't give much information. I mean, we don't get motivated. I mean, it's not a cohesive statement. So, I mean, like, it's bad. But most of the organizations, I mean, they don't even have a bad AI vision. So at least you should start defining something which will motivate your employees and they will understand what you are going to do, what your end objective would look like. So need to have something if you are using AI tools. Maybe one or two sentences at least. Then then the next aspect is how are we going to identify the use cases. So I know that being banking professionals, you get to work with a lot of third-party vendors, and these third-party vendors actually bring in a lot of nice to have tools, applications, and technologies. They look really, really cool. I mean, even we get excited when we see these things. But I mean, do we really have a requirement, or are we investing on these things, or are we buying these things because these vendors are pushing? Now, maybe so as I explained before as well, now these CEOs and other leadership level people, they go to cool conferences and exhibitions, and they see nice tools and technologies. So they want these nice to have stuff to be implemented in their environment, right? But it doesn't work like that. If we don't have a proper requirement or a need, then implementing these tools would be a bad idea. So are we buying because we want, or are we buying because of the vendor, because the vendors are pushing? So that's something we need to define. And and other thing is that some people want to have these pet projects. Like so, I visit a lot of customers. I work with a lot of people directly, and when I go there, um, they said, okay, we want to do something with AI. We want to have AI in our environment. So why do we need to have AI? I mean, there's no need to have AI in your environment. So that I mean that whatever the technologies you are using, not even AI, any technology that you are using should be coupled with your business strategy and business objectives. So if the technologies are not matched with business objectives, there's no point of using any technology. You might as well use an Excel sheet to get things done, or follow a manual process. Doesn't matter as long as it's working well for you. So if you have a plan to change your business, or maybe do something better, maybe grow or expand or reduce cost or automate or whatever, then see whether AI tools would serve the purpose. Not because you want to have pet projects or something like that. So need to plan everything with the business objectives. I mean, Copilot or ChatGPT or whatever. There's no point in using these tools if they don't bring business benefits. So couple with your business strategy and business objectives. And uh, other thing is that, oh yeah, third thing gives a similar idea. I mean, we buy stuff and then try to figure out ways of using these technologies. So these are, I mean, we see these things everywhere. I see it in Sri Lanka with a lot of customers, and I'm sure that you must be experiencing these things in UAE as well. So we need to have a structured, repeatable methodology to identify the use cases. So these are some of the steps to identify the right use cases. So step one, map your business process. You need to have a good idea about what your current business processes are, right? I mean, when we consult customers on AI implementations. So when we go to customer environment, so they straight away want us to identify some use cases and propose AI solutions, and it doesn't work like that. Even within your department or business unit, or maybe across your divisions, or maybe I don't know, within your banking functions or whatever. First thing that you need to do is identifying the right processes. Even if you are doing ChatGPT, then you need to know in which process these tools would bring the right benefits. I mean, people are nowadays using these tools in a very ad hoc manner. Some people try to use it for CV, job description, just an example, JD creation, maybe someone else for KPI creation. But if you have the right process defined, then you know where to use these tools even. And for large applications and all, this is very, very critical. So mapping the current business process, you need to identify the people who are involved, because sometimes you need people in the loop, and sometimes you need to completely remove people from the loop. Human in the loop, human out of the loop. So these are two main methodologies of implementing AI. So who's involved, who's making decisions, who's doing manual tasks, who are the internal parties, who are the external parties, what are the departments, what are the data flows, all these things should be properly documented. The inputs and outputs. How does the data come in? How does the data go out? Do you have the right documentations? And how are people interacting with each other? How are decisions being made? Then how much time is spent? And what's the cost for per an hour? How many people are involved? So all these things are needed to calculate the time and cost. Then maybe any bottlenecks or issues in your current systems or processes. Do you have manual steps? Do you have paper-based documentation when it comes to a process? What are the pain points? What are the delays? What are the errors? You need to identify. Then uh, maybe a basic risk assessment at this point, and identify how the decisions are being made. So mapping a business process is very, very important. So very recently, not very recently, I mean around 2-3 months back, I went to meet a customer to do a AI consultation to identify the right use cases to propose some solutions. So I went there, and the conversation was really, really good. And I had a good discussion with their CEO. And so they were really happy. I was also happy, and I felt that we could start working quickly. Then I came back, and I asked them to provide some information. So I listed a few areas which I needed to study, like getting information about current processes, so all these things that I have mentioned in this slide. And I sent an email, and so they said that they will provide the information as soon as possible. And yeah, and 2 days back, they sent me another email saying that they need some time to prepare the information, and so I have been following up with them, but still they are unable to fully gather the information that we need. That means they don't have external like existing documentation. They don't have the process properly mapped. So without those information, it's very difficult for us to do a study. Right? This is real life. So mapping your current business process is very, very important. And so you know that if you are going for a battle, no, I mean, like if you are going to cut down a tree, then you need to spend the majority of your time sharpening the axe. So this is something like that. You need to spend majority of your time finding this information, documenting them, mapping them. Then your life will be very, very easy when it comes to other steps. Right. So step two is identifying the AI opportunities. So at this point, so you know the current process, and you feel like certain areas certain areas might do with some enhancement. Um, uh, let's say you feel that we are doing fraud detection manually, so maybe AI can help fraud detection. And you feel that okay, we have a huge customer churn in one particular segment, so maybe AI can help us to reduce the churn, or maybe AI can help us to better forecast demand for the next month, things like that. So at this point, you get a good idea because you have a good understanding about the current processor. So step two, identifying certain opportunities in certain areas at a high level. And so this is the step two. Then in step three, you are going to evaluate the feasibility. So not every AI opportunity is going to be feasible. So that's something we need to keep in mind. Mm. There are few areas that you can actually look into to identify the high-level feasibility. One is data. Okay. Now, when it comes to Sri Lankan government, a lot of digital transformation or digitalization efforts are not taking place because we don't have the right data in the country. At least, I mean, uh, maybe we have some data in a paper-based format. Maybe in a lot of situations, we don't even have the data in paper-based format. So most of the digital transformation initiatives actually fail. So you need to see whether you have the right data, or we have the data properly cleaned, we have the data properly labeled. So I think I spoke about labeling during our first session under supervised machine learning. So you need to see whether you have the right data. Then, do we have the right technologies? I mean, are there existing technologies? So do we have any information about similar implementations across the country or maybe region or globally? Do other people engage in similar stuff or use cases? Or are we talking about something really, really advanced, something futuristic? So the technical capabilities, technical feasibility of the use case implementation. Then integration. Do we have existing applications which need to be integrated for this to properly implement this use case? Can we modernize these applications? Or are there bottlenecks? Do we have support for existing applications? So things like that. How are we going to integrate this new system with others? Then, since you are in the banking industry, are there regulations governing or controlling behavior? Will we face regulatory consequences if we try to implement AI for this use case? Do we have any limitations? So, if so, what are the limitations? So, regulatory and compliance aspect you need to properly study. Then internally, last but not least, very, very important, do we have the internal culture of people to accept these changes? Do we have proper change management processes and procedures to go through a change like this? Will our people accept? Are they ready? Do they have the right mindsets? So most of the AI cases, when it comes to implementation, they it's very difficult to convince people because people are afraid. They think that okay, our jobs would be at stake, or maybe I might not get a increment next year because AI is now doing my job. I will not be able to get an increment, right? I will not be able to get promotions, and so things like that. And people have different mindsets. So, do we have a mechanism to address these things? So, you need to evaluate the feasibility. And steps 4 and 5, estimating value. So we'll discuss about this thing later as well. Uh, Cost savings before and after. You need to identify the cost before AI implementation and what would it look like after the implementation. Whether we are increasing revenue, increasing profits, things like that. Whether there's a reduction in risk, reduction in fraud, reduction in breaches, and are we increasing our productivity? Are people doing more with the same time using AI these tools? So you need to properly estimate the benefit values. Then, based on this information, you can actually prioritize the use cases that you need to address first, right? So then once you prioritize, then you can think of any proof of concepts or pilot projects and go for the next step. So at this point, you are trying to prioritize the use cases that you need, that prioritize use cases that may um, may get solved, but by implementing AI. So this is the high level criteria. Right. So I think this slide is a repeat of what I explained, so I will skip this. Right. So when you identify the prioritized use cases, you need to make a business case to senior managers, or maybe your chairman, or maybe your board of directors. So how are we going to do that? So there are, I mean, like 10 steps that I would follow to create a good, arguable use case. So this is how we are going to present it. The first most important thing is identifying the problem statement. So what is a problem? So problem is something which we need to solve. So when you are designing a solution, when you are maybe trying to do something, there's something called design thinking. So in design thinking, one of the most important aspects is identifying the problem and properly defining it. So if we don't properly define the problem, it's very difficult for us to find the solution. Because in problem, what you see at the surface level is not the underlying actual problem. I mean, if you take an iceberg, you see the tip of the iceberg above the water. But more than 90%, 95% of the iceberg is actually below the water surface level. So you don't see that. So in a problem also, what you see is not the actual truth. So you need to deep dive, do a lot of research, gather information, and identify the right problem that you need to solve. So this will act like the base for the upcoming steps. So problem statement, defining problem statement actually requires multiple people for multiple disciplines. I mean, you can't do it with one IT guy. So IT league, I mean, like multiple departments should get together, form a team, and discuss and properly define the problem statement that we are going to solve with AI. Then where are we right now? What's the situation? To map everything and identify where you are right now. Then the AI potential AI solution. What can AI do? Is it for predictive analytics? Is it for descriptive analytics, or is it for prescriptive analytics? Anything, something like that. So you need to properly identify the potential AI solution. And what are the expected benefits? Will it reduce the number of hours that people are working? Can we reduce the head count? Or will the error rates go down? If the error rates go down, then what would be the expected cost savings? Things like that. You need to identify. Or is it a qualitative benefit, like improvement of customer satisfaction, or improvement of your brand reputation, or maybe improvement of your decision making time, things like that? Is it a qualitative approach? Qualitative things can also be translated into quantitative criteria using statistics as well. But what are the expected benefits? Then your management might ask, okay, I see the benefits, but do we have the data? What are the data needs? So we have done some anti-money laundering implementations across a few banks in Sri Lanka. And but even though the technical solution is right, the data which is fed into these solutions are not actually right. So even if the system is working, the outputs are not right because the data has a lot of duplications, quality issues, errors, etc. The system is giving a completely different output. So do we have the right data? The risks and mitigations. So what are the risks of, we'll discuss about certain risk aspects in the coming slide. Uh, Are we doing a risk assessment to identify the risks? And if so, what are the mitigation mechanisms? So there are different methods to mitigate risks. So you can actually, if you are a big company and if you are very strong, and if you have the capacity, then you can actually accept risks. You think that, okay, maybe 100,000 loss is nothing for us because we have enough tolerance for that. So you can accept the risk. You can actually transfer a risk. You can get insurance and transfer your risk. So someone else is going to be responsible for that. Not responsible. I mean, they're going to compensate you for that. Or else you can avoid the risk. So you see that let's say if a certain market segment is not giving you the right benefits, I mean, like there's no point of giving loans to that and loans to that crowd. Or maybe let's say that in real life, if you feel that a certain road could get affected by landslides, you can avoid that road. So you are avoiding the risk. And then also you can mitigate the risk as well. You apply certain controls, let's say technical controls, administrative controls, or logical controls, and you try to bring the risk level down to an acceptable level. So you try to mitigate the risk. Then number seven, do we have money? So does our department have money, or does our company have money, or do we need investments? That you need to decide. If you let's say if you go and tell your managers that you need ChatGPT or Copilot or whatever for your division, if your department budget doesn't allow it, then there's no point. Then you have to ask for more money. So what's the investment that you need, right? If it's a bank-wide, I mean, a holistic implementation, then your investors may have to pump money, something like that. What's the investment required? Then timelines and milestones. So what time would it take to prepare, gather information, and how long will it take to implement the solution, and how long will it take to bring the benefits? What are the key milestones, delivery milestones, etc. You need to properly define. Then number nine, I explained about KPIs, monitoring mechanisms, success matrices. So what would indicate success? Is it the reduction of error rate, or reduction of customer complaints, or number of customer complaints attended per hour, or resolved per hour? What's the success criteria? Then based on these things, you can give the final recommendation, whether you are recommending to go ahead, or whether you are not recommending to go ahead. So the main point is that when you are presenting this, when we are preparing this case and preparing the flow of information, don't be biased. If you start with the mindset that we need to implement this use case, then you will be biased for that, and you will try to justify it. And if you feel that, okay, this use case is not going to work, then you will be biased for that. So start going through this use case with the neutral mindset. So you argue fairly, and you will come to a good balanced outcome. Otherwise, you will be biased for one aspect. Right. So before we move forward, do we have any questions? Any questions? Sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me check those. Sorry for that. So I think. Sorry, something happened. Just give me a second. Right. Yeah. Right. So the next thing is, how are we going to make the business case? So let's see how we can calculate the high-level ROI to prepare a business case. So ROI basically means the total benefits minus total cost divided by total cost and multiplied by 100%. So this is a basic calculation for ROI. So when we are trying to calculate the cost baseline, there are multiple areas that we need to understand. So first most important thing, very obvious thing, is people cost. So you can actually count the number of heads, number of people who are involved in a certain task or certain process or whatever. Then you can actually calculate, the total cost to the company of those people, the fully loaded salaries, then you can easily calculate the people cost. So if there are maybe let's say 20 call center agents in a call center and they are working, let's say 12 hours per day, something like that, then you know the cost per month, right? And time cost. So if people are, let's say, engaged, let's say a customer comes to the counter and you take on average 4 minutes to serve a customer, then what's the expense? What's the cost for that particular task? Number of hours spent or number of minutes spent. So you know how to calculate the time cost. Then errors. People make errors. So let's say if on average, if we are making, let's say 1% error in calculating, let's say I don't know, when we are, let's say if we are if there's 1% error when we are underwriting or calculating a certain risk, then how much would it cost for the company? Then but there are other hidden aspects as well. So opportunity cost, uh, it's a bit I mean, like most people don't see these things, but everything has an opportunity cost. So you are picking something up. So what's the opportunity cost for that? Uh, I mean, but this is not that visible in most of the environments, but you need to properly calculate the opportunity cost as well. So if you are trying to, let's say, if you implement an AI system and people have more time because of the time savings, then what are they going to do? Do they have enough other work to do, or are they going to idle? So if they don't have other work to do, if they are just idling, then there's no point of implementing the AI system, right? They need to have other work to do. So, so if let's say now you are using ChatGPT for job description creation, or maybe to match JDs with applicant CVs, or maybe for other recruitment or drafting emails, then you are obviously saving time. But what are you going to do in that spare time, in that free time? Are you going to do more work, or are you going to just gossip and work around the office? So what's the calculation for that, and how are you going to identify that aspect? So you need to be aware of that as well. So you don't have this mechanism, then there's no point of buying Copilot, right? I mean, you might as well ask people to do that on their own. So what are they going to do in the time that is saved? And tool cost. What are the existing softwares, using applications, technologies, infrastructures? So that should also be taken into current cost or baseline cost. And one of the most important things that you need to keep in mind is that most of the companies actually underestimate the AI cost, but by at least 40 to 60%. So if they say that their AI cost is 500,000 US dollars, then their actual cost is much higher, right? Much higher. So this is something you need to keep in mind. So let's say 500 into, if it's 40% higher, that means the actual cost is between seven. So if they say 500,000, then the actual cost is between 700,000, and it will go above. This is something you need to keep in mind. Right. So then, so when it comes to AI cost calculations, so these things are not visible to people most of the time. So people actually calculate the infrastructure cost. People calculate the people cost. People calculate the subscription or vendor payments that they are making, but they do not take these aspects into account. That's why actual AI costs are much higher than what they present in presentations or board papers. One area is data preparation, cleaning, labeling, uh, how much effort you have to put into preparing the data. One cost aspect. Then if you are developing, if you are like maybe let's say fine tuning a model or doing some customization, so maybe doing some fine tunings for your infrastructure or passive infrastructure or whatever, are we calculating that cost? Then if you are going to integrate with other systems or legacy systems or enterprise applications that you have, are we calculating that cost? Or any manual human effort you are putting into evaluating proposals, vendor selections, POCs, onboard, contract drafting, everything, are we calculating that cost? Then internal culture change management cost, initial user trainings, are we calculating that cost? So all these things should be properly defined when you are trying to calculate the cost for AI implementation. Most of the times, people actually neglect these aspects. And also, you need to pay attention for quantitative benefits as well as qualitative benefits. So we call quantitative benefits as hard ROI, pretty easy for calculation. So I already explained these things. These are kind of obvious, but there are other non-obvious aspects as well. We call them qualitative aspects. I mean, customer experience. I mean, let's say now, if I am a customer, if there's a large customer base and if you are using proper AI for customer service, the customers might be very, very happy. So you can see that from customer surveys and maybe or net promoter scores or whatever, but a bit difficult to calculate, right? Customer experience in enhancement. So, I mean, if you are having social media sentiment analysis kind of tools, it might be easier for you to get an understanding, but how we are going to identify that? Or maybe if you do a really, really good marketing campaign or brand awareness campaign using AI tools, what are the mechanisms for identifying that advantage? Or else any competitive advantage. So these are, or maybe regulators might be happy with you because you are using AI tools and your fraud detection rate goes up and they are very satisfied with your bank. So regulators will be happy. So does that happiness actually, reflected? I mean, is that happiness actually reflected in your environment under ROI? So that's something we need to think about. So qualitative aspects and quantitative aspects. So you need to carefully evaluate these two when it comes to identifying benefits. Right. So So these are the areas that you need to consider when it comes to ROI calculations. How are we going to identify the costs, existing baseline costs? How are we going to identify the benefits of AI implementations, qualitative and quantitative, and also hidden costs when it comes to AI implementation. So if you properly calculate these things, you will be able to identify the proper ROI. Right. Any questions before we move forward? I know that today's session is a lot of theory because we are talking about AI governance, policy and strategy. So obviously it's a theoretical aspect, but this is very much critical when it comes to artificial intelligence because we don't pay attention to these areas. So if you have any questions, please do interrupt me and ask. Right. And when we are talking about AI strategy and implementation, there are the most important thing we need to understand is the operating model. So the recommended model is having a central hub for strategy development, roadmap development, governance aspect, etc., and having an extended spoke model with business units. So you identify the risks, you create the strategy, you create the governance models, and everything, vendor due diligence, all regulatory monitoring, everything happens centrally. Then you involve business units, like domain experts, people who are having knowledge, etc., as a spoke model. So central hub having different business spokes decentralized. So these business spokes will actually get the systems implemented and help you with identifying use cases and providing expertise, knowledge, and data, and monitoring these things, providing feedback. So all these things will happen in a decentralized manner, but you need to have a proper central model for other governance aspects. So this is the recommended model. I mean, maybe in an environment like defense, which is uh, highly uh, uh, centralized, you need to have a hub and spoke model to get the best advantage. Otherwise, otherwise it's difficult to manage, difficult to expand, difficult to scale, and AI projects might fail. So this is the most recommended operating model. So this is just a sample implementation roadmap that I have prepared. I mean, what you need to do in the initial phase, 0 to 6 months. So I mean, most important thing is you need to establish the governance criteria first. Without implementing governance, there's no point of going for the technology areas. The governance first, then you move into other technologies and other areas. So maybe I'll share the deck later so you can have a look at it. But you understand. So governance first, then you move into other aspects of AI implementation. So usually a comprehensive AI implementation program will take at least 2 to 3 years, or maybe more than that. So, and one other thing that you need to know is that AI evolves very, very fast. So when you are moving across a 3-year strategy, 3-year roadmap, so but when you reach second year, a lot of technologies uh, might have changed. So the strategies should have a mechanism to be flexible, adjust, and adapt accordingly. Otherwise, when you reach the 36th year, everything will be changed and you have to redo a different strategy. Right. Now we come to an interesting part, how we are going to govern AI responsibly. So we spoke about strategy, the operating models, the 7